Have you ever had a solicitation and for some strange reason you just don't know whether or not you should go after it? Well, if that's you, then I always say just start with the ABCs 1, 2, 3. Let's go ahead and get right to it. The first thing that you should always start with is the about. The who, what, when, where, and why. Starting with who is the solicitation coming from? Which agency, sub agency, or which specific office? Because, of course, if you've done your homework, then you probably have a pretty good idea on what they're looking to spend and on really what streams, what lines, what products, and what services. The what? Of course, what are they really specifically asking for? Of course, you need to eventually do a deep dive into it, but really, if you poke through that solicitation and within 5 minutes you still have no clue really what they're asking for, then maybe that's something that you should really consider because really within that sample PWS or that solicitation itself, they should really outline what they're looking for. And then of course the when, it's probably the simplest out of all of them because it should outline when is this actually due. Whether this is a sources sought or a solicitation, there may be different dates. So ask yourself, is there an on-site visit, which of course always highly encouraged to go to? Is there a sources sought notice that precludes anyone that doesn't submit that from really responding? We rarely see that. Just like in that site visit, sometimes it will preclude if you don't go, you're not going to be able to bid on that one. But again, most of these dates, or really all of these dates, will be outlined. And so don't put your money or banging your buck on waiting to the last minute, thinking that there's going to be an extension. Just stick to the dates that they have there. And where does this work need to be performed? I mean, not just the location, but do the workers and the work need to be performed on site? Or is there flexibility to permit the services to be either done remotely or maybe a hybrid? This is definitely a question that most folks, or at least one of the candidates, will ask during the Q&A. Again, depending on the discipline of the industry and the work that needs to be performed, but it's not just the location, but actually where the personnel doing the work can work from. And last but certainly not least is why. Why does this solicitation matter to your business or organization? And ultimately, why does it matter to the government? And there needs to be some kind of alignment there. The capabilities, the core competencies, the services that you offer, is this something of value to the government? Because that's what we always need to deliver is value. Use this step to see, like, is your organization a good fit? Again, if there's just too many red flags this early, then maybe you need to go ahead and keep things moving, because if it's one of those solicitations where you say, our company can do anything, we can hire anyone, I mean, then you can basically respond to any solicitation. But again, that probability of win, something that each of us should be having our factors to try to increase that number, then again, you're exercising and spending and exerting too much energy instead of planning and playing the game a little bit more strategically. But let's go ahead and move on to the B. The B is for beware. And again, this is where a lot of folks mess up. Beware of the fine print. Like, what in this solicitation may be something that we need to pump our brakes and really think about a little bit more. You don't want to get into writing and maybe 20, 30 pages into a technical response just to find out that there's a requirement for a facilities clearance, something that your organization doesn't have. And now you have to try to find someone to partner with. I mean, wouldn't it be good to know this early on? And that's what these ABCs are about, is really taking the time to pre-qualify this solicitation based on the proper alignment with your organization. This is where you'll be aware of course, the page limit counts. If this is one of those 3-volume, technical management approach, and of course, the pricing and different volumes, then you definitely want to look for that section that specifies and lays out the format and of course what the government's looking for in each of those sections there. And then are there any socio-economical like certifications or standards that you just have to have? Is this like a set aside? These things of course will jump out, or they should, rather quickly. And something that a lot of folks don't do, Nugget, is there language that seems to be like pre-wired? Is this kind of like too specific, almost like it's written for a certain organization or something like that, especially if you're coming in late for whatever reason. And this is in the RFP or RFQ stage. You didn't get in early to pre qualify yourself during that shaping phase, pre solicitation phase. Then sometime if it looks and smells like it, again, but I digress. So if everything looks good after the A and B, then for C, it's time to commit. This is where you need to decide, are we all in or all out? This is really where the rubber should meet the road. I mean, this is where you should start committing your resources or thinking about who's going to write, to this solicitation, what calendar, what schedule, like, for if this is a small group of team that's doing this engagement, you need to start putting those different mechanisms together to basically make this and craft this to be the perfect vessel on behalf of your organization. I mean, lock in a plan, stick to a timeline, and then, of course, that other side of the C is going to be cost. You definitely want to always be competitive, but again, each organization has their own special flavor and sauce when it comes to that. But like I said, you need to commit and then start thinking about that cost factor here. And so your 1, 2, 3s are just really 3 questions that you need to ask. Number 1, do we qualify? I mean, is our past performance able to be used and demonstrate kind of the value again that we can add? Our past performance, because a lot of these solicitations, whether you think it or not, that's going to be one of those key differentiators or distinguishers. Because like I said, if you think you can just hire anyone or we can do anything, then what makes you different from anyone else out there? Certifications, not just, again, those socioeconomic, but maybe this is for IT services and there's specific resumes, 3 key personnel that need to be there. And, program manager, a network architect, and a solutions architect. And among each of those, they need to hold certain certifications on the specific side there. Then, again, you can go look and say that you have someone, but when you need to submit those candidates, it's always best to have someone because the government's going to be looking for those key personnel to be readily available that you basically submit on behalf of your company. Technically, of course, are you technically capable of performing the work? But again, like I said, there's so many different facets here, but really that's the question that we should be asking ourselves at this point. Second, I mean, do we have the time? A lot of folks start with sam.gov. They do the next 30 days or then the next 2 months, and they just start really from a solicitation. They play it backwards instead of playing it forwards. Again, they don't give themselves enough time to get in early during that pre-solicitation phase and then wait or communicate with the government during that time before the true solicitation is dropped. And again, we probably all have been at this point, or if it's the slow season and that's what we're looking for, but long story short, once you have that commitment there, like we said, we know what time we have to play with, and you should never rely on an extension of being put in. But again, once you've committed and locked in, you need to put your best foot forward, but you're going to have to commit those resources really to be able to write to this. And third is a question that you should always ask yourself, but you shouldn't have to ask yourself, but really, how bad do we want this one? Again, not just looking at that probability of win, but I mean, from a team and from a company perspective, like really, like what sweat equity are we going to put into this solicitation? What long nights, things like that, do we have ahead? Each solicitation is a little bit different, and the product versus the services, as we all know, there's different requirements and size that come to that one. But that's a question that you're going to have to ask and look deep within yourself. But again, if each of these ABCs and 1, 2, 3s at the end, everything looks good and adds up, then you've got your answer. I mean, this simple ABC 1, 2, 3 should definitely keep your pipeline healthy, keep your team happy, centralized, organized, working as one direction, one team cohesively there. And again, don't doubt yourself. I mean, if your gut feeling is just really telling you no after all of this pre-qualifying this opportunity, then Yeah, and I don't ever call anything a waste of time, but really you don't want to commit your time and yourself to something. But hopefully these are just some things that perhaps you didn't think about, or maybe you've already got this working as a process in your team's flow. But regardless of what it is, then I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. Is there a methodology that your team uses? Something that's simple, easy to remember, and of course, always something that's repeatable. If so, like I said, I'd love to hear you down in the comments. But I want to thank each and every one of you always, always for rocking in here. And until next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves. Peace.